Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Cliff Kelly, and I am on V103. I'm a disc jockey at 6. That's a joke. I have a talk show at 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, and I had two wonderful guests today. Speaking of your cup running over, I had Dick Gregory, and then followed by this wonderful gentleman sitting right here with me, the Honorable Minister, and we are going to be introducing him in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to just thank V103 and Expo for today's Black Woman, and particularly Mary Green Promotions Group. They're the ones who came up with this idea. And Stephanie Johnson is the producer of this segment, and please give her a big round of applause. Where are you, Stephanie? Where is she? Oh, there she is, right. And she called and called and called and called. And her phone bill looks like the war debt, I'm sure. But it's wonderful to have the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan here with us today. Let me say this also before we get into this. We did this on the other station where I work, on WVON, with the Minister and Jesse Jackson. We did this, Reverend Jackson, we did this on November 5th. It was the first time they had done that. It was a historic occasion where they sat down together. It's a fantastic DVD, and the Respect for Life bookstore has this downstairs. They have a vendor downstairs. And I want to also just thank Brother Bertrand Mohammed, who is the manager of Respect for Life bookstore. He does a great job with all of the folks who work for them. This is a great occasion because there are so many problems that we have in this world for anybody, but specifically for African Americans. And I think that the person who addresses this, the problems we have, but does so in a way to not only address the problems, but unlike many individuals, come up with solutions. We all know what the problems are. Most of us do, some to a greater degree than others. But you can hear a lot of people talk. In fact, I would, if I have time, read an email I got about the panel discussion that was held just recently about the state of Black America, and someone in which the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was a member. But as the person said, except for a few people on the panel, none of those folks have ever done anything other than talk. There has to be something done afterwards. There has to be some sort of action. Now, many people don't have the capacity or the ability to do that because they really don't have any followers. That's what makes this person different. Before we bring him on, I want to just acknowledge the wonderful, wonderful lady, the wife of the minister, Mother Khadijah, who is sitting here. So good to see her. This gentleman, unquestionably, in my humble opinion, and I have an opinion about everything, whatever it is, whatever it is, I got an opinion. But I also can tell you why I have the opinions I have. He is, in my opinion, again, the most articulate and bright African American we have out here today because of his understanding not only of domestic problems, but this gentleman also has a deep interest and caring for all of the Africans in the diaspora. Many people talk about what's going on. We know what's going on. Well, not all of us, but many of us know what's going on here in the United States. But this gentleman is the only one who can travel all over the world and be recognized and honored, and everyone thinks how wonderful he is because he speaks peace. He talks about peace, and that's what we need. And we're just so pleased to have him here today. And we're just going to have a conversation. And we're going to talk about a few things relative to foreign policy, and then some domestic issues. And we're just so pleased to have him here. Please welcome the leader of the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Brother Minister, many of the things that I am going to ask you today or mention, you'll say, gee, that sounds familiar. And it probably is, because you probably said them already. I mean, the best newspaper in the world is The Final Call, and I read that. And of course, I listen to you, and I come to many of the events which you speak. So some of the things that I will mention have already been, you've already said them, but I just wanted, for the sake of our audience today, to hear what you think about certain issues. I want to start off, because we have a major problem in the world, and you addressed that. And on May 3rd of last year, at the National Press Club, Brother Minister, you had a world press conference. And I thought it was very interesting. If you remembered what you said, we were addressing the situation in Iraq. And whereas many people, of course, think that this is something that happened as a response to the attack on the United States on September 11th, you stated, of course, that that was not true at all. And you mentioned the letter that had been sent to Clinton by the so-called neocons saying that we have to attack Iraq. President Clinton wouldn't do it, but then the guy that's in the White House now made a commitment to do that even before he ran. Give us a little background on that so that we know where we are on that. Why was this insistence on regime change? And a lot of people think, well, it's oil. It's a lot more than oil, and you brought that out.
First, let me say how happy and honored I am to be the guest of the sisters who have put on this expo each year. And this is my first time attending, but I'm very honored, Sister, for the invitation, and honored to be here, and honored to be sitting next to my esteemed brother, one of the most intelligent talk show hosts anywhere to be found in the United States.
Thank you.
We'll get to that part of it maybe a little later, but as you probably are aware, that there is a very small group of persons that have literally taken control of the government of the United States of America. A small group of persons have taken control of the economy. And a small group of persons have in their minds a global view that a few will dominate and control the minds and the wealth of the many who suffer as they live on this wonderful planet. Every idea looks for the right vessel or vehicle to make that idea known. Sometimes the person who is the father of the idea is not necessarily the best exponent of that idea. The neoconservatives, who represent a small group of thinkers, planners, policy makers, most of whom happen to refer to themselves as members of the Jewish faith. But these persons have a global view, and they see Islam as the international threat to Western hegemony over the entire planet. These neoconservatives are, in the main, Zionists. And a Zionist is not necessarily a spiritual person that is guided by the principles that God gave to the prophets that he sent to the children of Israel. These are persons who have felt that that tiny state of Palestine is a part of their inheritance. And since the United Nations in 1948 partitioned Palestine, and with the blessing of most of the Western nations, gave birth to the state of Israel, there has been conflict in the Middle East between the Arabs who have lived there for centuries and centuries and centuries, most of whom, the original Arabs, are really black. And I was shocked to go to Syria and find black Syrians, black Palestinians, black Iraqis, because that is the so-called Garden of Eden between the Tigris and the Euphrates River, a very, very ancient civilization. And that land has been so, I would say, set up by the British to divide Iraqis and different Arab groups into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and all of those are part of the British scheme, that when they were leaving, they set up boundaries that would create tension between those who lived there prior to the new boundaries being set up by the British. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, our teacher, used the term skunk of the planet. And this is not a nice term, but it's very descriptive, because a skunk, even when dead, leaves a stench that you find it very difficult. Even though the skunk is dead and you buried the skunk, the scent will drive you up the wall. Well, so it is with those who have colonized the darker people of the world. When they left the residue of themselves, and it has created havoc in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia. So to bring it right to the point, the neocons found in President George Bush a willing vehicle to express the ideas of the neoconservatives, which was after 9/11. And there's so much debate over 9/11. You really need to look deeply into 9/11, because most of us, as black people and generally human beings, can never fathom the depth of Satan. It's very difficult to understand the wicked minds that are behind a lot of the things that are going on. You see the effect of it, but you don't see the hand that is actually manipulating world affairs and world events. The Bible puts it like this: we war not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world and spiritual wickedness in high places. These are literally satanic minds that are operating, and it, unfortunately, in my judgment, President Bush is the vessel through which these satanic minds are working, supposedly in the name of liberty, in the name of freedom. See, Satan will transform himself into an angel of light, but if you watch the works tell you who it is. And so there's oil there, there's great fields of drug potential in Afghanistan. And while the Taliban were there, the drugs weren't moving. Right. But the moment they got rid of the Taliban, now Afghanistan is the largest producer of that, is it a poppy? Yeah, poppy. That right. Produces the heroin. And now heroin is flowing out of Afghanistan. Oil, the large reservoir of oil that was there, plus their fear of Islam. And for those of my Christian family here that you don't understand Islam, and they would have you believe that Islam is a religion of hatred, it's a religion of violence, but these are people that hate the presence of American and foreign soldiers on their land. If they desired to get rid of Saddam Hussein, that was for them to do. Now the country is in worse shape than it ever was with the American presence. And the treasuries of the government have been raped. Over $300 billion. The government is borrowing money to fight a war that was absolutely unnecessary. Saddam Hussein had no power to harm America or Israel or any of its neighbors. After the war in 1991, Iraq became a toothless tiger. She had nothing to defend her airspace. The type of bombs that they dropped in 1991 were these dirty bombs with depleted uranium in those bombs. And according to something I read on the internet the other day, over 11,000 American soldiers have died from what they call Gulf War syndrome. The air is poisoned, the water is poisoned, the ground is poisoned, and our children are over there, and they've been there now a little over a year, and most of them that come back, you will find them ill with the depleted uranium that has poisoned the environment. This is a terrible thing that the president has done, but he's moving further and further in more and more conflict with the religion or the people of Islam. And this is the worst fight that that man could have picked, because these are different kind of mind. They don't fear death at all. And anytime a man will strap himself with a bomb and kill you and kill anyone that sides with you, see, they intend to get America out of there, and they are an ancient people who have weathered many storms, and this is just one more storm, the end of which you will see America losing. She'll never win another war. This over for her.
Brother Minister, the Lee Hamilton, the vice chairman of the 9/11 panel, who, as you know, was a longtime Democratic congressman from Indiana. In fact, at one point, he was the chair of the House Foreign Relations Committee.
Right.
He just said the other day at a speech before the Chicago Foreign Relations Committee that we must show the Muslims that we care. He is saying that so many people in the Muslim world think that this is an attack on Islam. You've already answered that to some degree, but I'd like you to just clarify whether you think that is the case. Also, in that same speech that you made at the National Press Club, and you mentioned this just a little about talking about Satan, but you say here, and this is a quote, 44 years ago, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to me, quote, Brother Farrakhan, you cannot fathom the depth of Satan, what you just said. Those of us who can't think like that would never believe that a human being was capable of planning the deaths of innocent people to further a political and an economic objective. This was in reference to the fact that there were many people who felt that September 11th could in fact have been avoided, that there was enough information out there among the intelligence community that it could have been avoided, but they knew that the American people would never go for an attack, a so-called preemptive attack on Iraq without there being some sort of reason. Can you clarify the fact that, or the belief, you would know this, just how many of our Muslim brothers and sisters think that this is an attack on Islam? And do you think, based on the information you have, that this attack on September 11th, where 3,000 people were killed, and of course the hundreds and hundreds of soldiers that are being killed, the thousands of innocent Iraqis that we kill every day that most people don't seem to be concerned about in this country, we're in trouble. But what is the belief of the world relative to why we're doing this?
If we study history, if you remember the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba, and just before that, or right after that, the Cuban Missile Crisis, there were generals in the U.S. Army who proposed to President Kennedy that a ship in Guantanamo Bay would be blown up and blamed on the Cubans, and the press would whip up the frenzy of the American people, and America then would go to war with Cuba. And that was a plan that Kennedy rejected, but it was designed to get rid of Fidel Castro and make the island of Cuba safe for quote-unquote democracy, like it was when Batista was there before Fidel. Now, if you look at a ship called the Maine that was in Cuban waters, and that ship was blown up by Americans, blamed on the Spanish, and the Spanish-American War took place, and as a result of that war, Puerto Rico, Cuba, the Hawaiian Islands became possessions of the government and people of the United States of America. Adolf Hitler, who was a master politician, is blamed for blowing up, is it the
Reichstag.
The Reichstag, which was a government building, killing many, many innocent people, but it was Hitler's way of doing something and then stripping the people of their liberties. Now we come to 9/11. That's why I say you have no idea of the wickedness that is involved when a small group of people want power and wealth and to strip the American people of their rights. Then September the 11th was convenient.
Right.
So what are 3,000 lives to people who see themselves controlling 6 billion people on the earth and all the resources of the earth? That is nothing. Now, here's the way I see it, and I believe time and God will bear witness to the truth of this. You know, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, nothing that is hidden will remain hidden. All the things that are done in the dark will be brought out into the light. And that will be a terrible day for those who have done wickedness in the dark, feeling that they're going to get away by deceiving the masses of the people. Now, here's a bomb. If you look at that building went down from what many scientists said was an implosion, like you see these great buildings that they set off bombs in it, and then you see it come straight down. Well, 3,000 lives were lost, but after those lives were lost, America, who had the sympathy of the world, then decided the time is right now. So attack Afghanistan. Afghanistan, the leader of the Afghan people said to President Bush, look, if you show us the evidence that Osama bin Laden actually was responsible for this, then we will hold him for you. President Bush said, we won't have none of that. And then the attack started. But they were planning to attack Afghanistan long before September the 11th. And the reason for that...
You mean Iraq?
I mean Iraq. Thank you, Cliff. They were planning to attack, even Afghanistan.
Before that, yeah.
Before September the 11th. And it was because they wanted a pipeline to come from the oil-rich neighbors of Afghanistan to the north. And they wanted to bring that pipeline through Afghanistan to Pakistan, into the Arabian Sea, into the Indian Ocean, and spread oil around. The Taliban were not in agreement with that pipeline. And I read a book that said that the Taliban met with United States officials, and they said to the Taliban, either you will have a carpet of gold or a carpet of bombs. Now, the Taliban did not agree with the American position, so America was already planning a war with Afghanistan, but 9/11 and the presence of Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan gave the government the cover that she needed to make the first attack in Afghanistan. And after they had conquered, and I put that in quotes because fighting is still going on in Afghanistan, the man that they had elected, President Karzai, the only city he controls is Kabul. All the countryside is in the hands of the quote-unquote warlords, and the war is raging with the Taliban, and Americans are dying there. You are fighting an ancient people, and I am sorry. There's no weapons that America has that can kill the spirit of those people. They beat the Russians, and that place in Afghanistan has been the death of many great powers in the past, and you might find it will be the same today. And I hope that did I answer your question?
Yeah, you answered the question. I just want to tell you, not only did Brother Minister answer the question, if he didn't, it sounded good. But I want you to know, let me be the first to tell you, because you may not have seen it, I knew you were on your way here. On Meet the Press today, your Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, said that you do not have to worry about the poppy fields and all of the heroin that's coming into the country because she's going to have a meeting with those people. That's what she told. So, do you feel better? Great.
If my dear sister Condoleezza goes to Afghanistan and meets with the warlords...
Now, she didn't say that.
Who is she meeting?
She's meeting with the ambassador from Afghanistan.
Well, he's in the same condition that the president
Yeah, that's
is.
right.
They have no control.
Well, he's probably selling some of the poppies. But I want to ask you this so we can move on to a couple of other issues, because this is so interesting. You said, in fact, you said it on the conversation on VON. This was the wrong war, the wrong time, and the wrong place. And you also, Brother Minister, went to a biblical text about the dry bones.
Yes.
You mentioned that the only upside to Bush getting another term is the fact that Americans are now looking at foreign policy in a much greater way than they did before. You also mentioned that after they understand what this government is doing in their name, people are going to rise up.
Yes, this country is headed for revolution, and it will not be you. It will be angry, 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 angry white people who see their country being taken from them. The question before, Cliff, was whether Muslims feel that this is a war against Islam. And the reason it is a war against Islam is if you understand Islam. The word Islam means one who submits or surrenders his or her will to do the will of God. Now, if you look in your scriptures, and most of this audience are my wonderful Christian family, and believe me, as a Muslim, there's no way in heaven or hell that I will fall out of love with my family that reared me. I grew up in church. And the only reason I joined Islam, to be very honest, is because the church was not addressing forthrightly the issue of black suffering at the hands of so-called white Christians. And so when I saw the hypocrisy, not of Jesus Christ, but the hypocrisy of a church that claimed Jesus while they were doing very evil things to us and to others, I could not abide that. So when I heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Brother Malcolm, I knew that that was a message that I had to become familiar with and use it to awaken our people. But now, you as a Christian, you cannot find in the scriptures anywhere where Jesus said, I am a Christian. Now you go back home today and start at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and read all the epistles of the apostles. None of them said they were Christian. Jesus never said, I'm a Baptist. Come on. You can't find it. He never said, he was baptized by John, but he never said, I am a Baptist. He never said, I'm a Methodist, though he said, I am the way. He never said, I'm Catholic, though he told his disciples, go ye into all the world and preach this gospel. See, Jesus was none of what you call yourself. And I said it in my speech at Savior's Day, I want to be what Jesus was. And you should want to be what Jesus was and is. It's not that Christian is a bad name, but to use names and labels for us to become divided. Baptists don't want to sit with Pentecostals, and Pentecostals don't want to sit with holiness, and holiness don't want to sit with sanctified, and sanctified don't want to sit with the Church of God in Christ. See, this is the madness of Satan imposed on Jesus, but it's also imposed on Muhammad and Islam, because Prophet Muhammad was not Shiite, he was not Sunni, he was not Hanafi, he was not Hanbali. These are sects and parties that grew up after the Prophet was gone. Moses was not a Jew, and Abraham was not a Jew. Now, what were they? That's the question you need to ask. And if you watch the words of Moses, the words of Jesus, the words of Muhammad, here's how they describe themselves. Moses, be ye not hearers of the word, but be ye what? Jesus said, not my will, but whatsoever the Father says, that I do, whatever he gives me, that I speak. He was in 1,000% submission to the Father, and that's how he could say, me and my Father are one. Now, when I went to sleep at night, my mom made me recite what you know as the Lord's Prayer. And when you say our Father, not his and not mine, but ours. So the same Father that did all this for Jesus, if you are in tune, he'll do the same for you. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy democracy come. I'm sorry, it didn't say that, did it? It said, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So democracy is not the kingdom of God. Theocracy is what you pray for. That God would bring his will to earth and we would live not under President Bush's rule or Prime Minister Blair's rule or anybody else's rule. We would live under the rule of God and his Christ. See, that is theocracy. And anytime you want God to rule your life, you're going to come into conflict with this world and its order. Think about that. Are you doing what God would want you and me to do? Or are you doing what you think is good for you and putting it on Jesus and putting it on God? See? So this liberty, this freedom, notice how the president laid on freedom all during his speech, his inauguration speech, right? And his State of the Union speech. Freedom, 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 freedom. Freedom, 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 freedom. Freedom to do what? See, you're free to be a fool. You're free to be a pimp. You're free to call your women bitches and whores. You're free to shake your butt on TV. You're free to get naked and stupid. You're free to use drugs. You're free to marry your own sex. You're free. But he never used the word justice. Because without justice, freedom means nothing. So that's why it's a war against Islam. It's a war against obedience to God. And that's why those people are not afraid of America's weapons. They believe in God. They believe in the hereafter. And they believe that if they die fighting for righteousness, there is no death for them. If you plumb the depth of what Jesus said, he who seeks to save his life will what? And he who is willing to lose his life for my sake, he said, will gain what? Eternal life. That's what they are all about over there. This man is using the name of Christianity and the name of Jesus to fight a dirty war with dirty aim and dirty purpose. And in the final analysis, it will be not only the undoing of the president, it will be the undoing of the power of the United States of America. You can look for that.
I think I just have one other question relative to foreign policy. No, that was fine. You know, that's great. In fact, I forgot I'm supposed to be asking you questions. I just keep going. It is obvious that the hypocrisy that exists, the inconsistencies abound out of this administration. Brother Minister, we had Condoleezza Rice go over to Europe and try to make nice to these people we've dumped on. And now, after that, the shrub, Bush, went out and he went to the various European countries also. But now, they have appointed a man named John Bolton as the ambassador to the U.S. Now, John Bolton was one of the people that signed that initial letter. He is an extreme neocon. He's not even a diplomat. He has made some of the worst comments as an undersecretary.
Yes.
And in fact, he even made the comment that the U.S. has no obligation to follow any international law coming from the United Nations. Now, you know, to put someone like that in that position obviously shows that there is no intention at all of trying to put together the type of things we need to have peace on this planet.
Again, the neoconservatives are fully in control. And you will see a gradual erosion of our liberties, whatever liberties that we had. And men like myself, or Dick Gregory, or Jesse Jackson, or Al Sharpton, or anyone who dares to speak truth to power in a time like this will and can be called enemy combatants. This is a wartime now. And as it was with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt signed an executive order that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad should be arrested and put in prison. Now, it makes no difference what you think about Louis Farrakhan. It makes no difference how much you may approve of the minister standing up for truth and standing up for justice and standing up for the oppressed of the world. At a time like this, when America is at war, then straight talk like mine or like Cliff's or like others can be seen as counterproductive. So they begin to move to shut you down. Cliff Kelly, as I said earlier, is one of the brightest stars in the universe of media. But right now, the bright stars that used to be on talk radio are gradually dying out. And now music and the most degenerate kind of cultural expression is being constantly fed to the American people and the world. So now intelligent talk is being put off the radio so that the airwaves are no longer used to enlighten, to encourage, to inspire, to motivate, to stimulate. No. It is only to feed the most base instinct of the human being. The sex drive, the drive for money, the drive for material acquisition. This is what you're being fed. And the children in school are being fed an education that is so substandard. The American people are gradually being dumbed down, and corporate America has bought up radio, bought up television, bought up newspapers, and the thing that they want to control is the internet. And if you don't have a computer and know how to get up on the internet to find what you're looking for, then you become the victim or the slave of the media control of those same forces that are in control of the government of the United States of America. And I fear that right now, what you are eating, what you are drinking, is getting you so lethargic. I mean, it's not an accident that in your neighborhood, all the fast food stores reside. In your neighborhood, the grease is popping. In your neighborhood, it's French fries and this and that and the other, your diet. And I mean, you are really a very sick people being marched into the oven of death. And you can't see it, but you boogieing and you partying on your way to your destruction. And if somebody doesn't sound the alarm and wake you up, within 10 years, we might not even exist if we don't wake up and wake up in a hurry.
This is excellent. this is a great segue right into our domestic problems that we have. And some of it I had already mentioned, like your eat to live. You just talked about that. I think you started off with a great part. We're going to talk about some domestic problems, then we're going to talk about something that's coming up to fight these things that the minister is talking about. And he has a plan. But I think the good place to start, based on what you were just saying, here's just something from a couple of days ago. Death rate of middle-aged black men double the rate for white men. We have the shrub, Bush, who says that we need to have a change in Social Security because it's bad for black men because they die earlier. Wouldn't it be great to suggest, why do black men die earlier? That's not even a question he's asking because he doesn't care. The disparity in health in this nation, Minister Farrakhan, is unbelievable relative to the fact of the cost that's involved, people who can't even afford health insurance, let alone going to a doctor when for preventative care. They go to the emergency room for primary care, which of course is a horrible thing. What is the situation with that? You have certainly done something that is wonderful with the Prostate Cancer Foundation in your name that's been formed, and the situation where you've gotten so many of our men to go get tested early enough so they don't have to die when they find out that they have it, where it can be treated. But where do you see, I know this all ties in what we're going to talk about at the end, but when you talk about health care, you just mentioned education. We have a tremendous problem with education. And not only our young black students, you got a lot of ignorant white folks out here.
Plenty.
Plenty of ignorant white people. You got more poor white people than you have poor black people because there are more of them. And how Bush can convince these people to vote against their own interest, because he makes this division, as you point out, between everybody, you know. And then we've got some blacks, we want to talk about the church, you know, the purchased pulpits, as some people call it, the situation with you know, there's money. And then the money, when you talked about the media, Armstrong Williams is a good example. Here this gentleman, and I use the word loosely for him, but obviously Armstrong was saying what he was saying because he was being paid to say it. And not only does he have no credibility, but what did we see in the paper the other day? Now he's on another talk show. He has another job. So there'll always be somebody who will take a Sambo like that, give him some money, and he'll go out here, even though we know that he is speaking untruth, the white media will still put him out there. We've got some major problems domestically. I've mentioned education, the health problems, the church, the media. Tie all this in together, and of course, many of these things, Brother Minister, would take money, and there is no money. The deficit is higher in this country than it has ever been in the history of the United States, and we came in with the greatest surplus we've ever had. So over $1 billion a week spent in a place where, as you pointed out earlier, if the people in Iraq wanted democracy, it was up to them to get it. Not for us to do it. And of course, that's not why we went there. Remember the weapons of mass destruction? The imminent danger? How many people would have voted, do you think, to say, we need to democratize Iraq? How many of the senators would have voted for that?
Very few.
That's right.
My brother, you know, the teacher of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, most of you may not have heard of him. We call him Master Farad Muhammad. He came here in the 30s, and he taught the early followers of Islam to throw everything in their medicine cabinet out. And he said that your hospital is your kitchen. And if you know how to eat, to live, and you know the chemistry of food, which is the chemistry of your body, then you can heal much of your illness by what you put in your mouth. And most of us that followed the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I mean, it was frightening in a sense, because we never saw death. In fact, so few people died in the Nation of Islam, one man could go all over the country and say Muslim funerals. And the older people in the mosque were all spry and full of vigor and vim and vitality. And all of that was not due to going to doctors. It was due to eating properly and thinking properly. So you don't need necessarily a lot of money to correct a health condition. You need a lot more sense. And the more knowledge you have of what this is that God gave us, this marvelous, magnificent creation called the human body. And if you know what to eat and how to cook it, and if you understand the reality of the land to your body, and if you understand that the enemy has taken land away from black people, and we in silliness have run away from the South and left land down there, and we've lost thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of land. Your grandmother was probably more healthy than you. Your grandmother could pick up weight that would kill you today, and you go to the gym.
My dear.
And our grandmothers were not suffering from obesity. We are an overweight people today because we are eating really the wrong kinds of food. And even those of us who learn how to eat, the sad thing is you don't control the production of what you eat. So when you go to the supermarket, it looks good, but is it? They put dye in the fruit to make it look orange, to make the lemon look yellow, to make the meat look red or pink. And these are carcinogens that end up giving you cancer. Now, if you're not aware of how the food is being raised, then even to eat that food is taking a chance. The hormones that they're pumping into the meat to fatten it before time so that they can make more money. Then they put these hormones in the meat, you eat the meat. And most of you that are in here that are 50 and 60, I'm speaking now to women. When you were a young lady, you probably had your menses at 12 and 13 and 14 years of age. But now our children at 9 years old have their menses. At 9 years old, they have breasts sometimes bigger than their mothers. Well, this is not normal. It is the kind of food that you're eating that is actually growing you just like it's growing that calf to get it to the market sooner. They're growing our little daughters, getting them to the market sooner. And while you are busy working, your fine-looking 9-year-old, your lovely formed 10-year-old, your beautifully figured 11 and 12-year-old is being sought after by men who have no job, nothing to do. So the woman, the woman who is the natural protector of the child, you are not there now. Because you have to work and the man is not there, so the children are being warehoused, and most of you even have been abused by uncles, by fathers, by grandfathers, by cousins, by brothers. You know the effect of this on you. And today, with your children coming to farm so young, most of them are abused, are misused. We got a lot of problems, and we're not going to solve them by our leaders putting our minds in the sky after we die. We've got to figure out how to live on this earth and get the best out of what God intended for us to have.
Brother Minister, you had a forum, which I attended, for men only at the Harold Washington Cultural Center. And the only woman that was there, and the minister said, can we have her come in and say a few words, was the Honorable Dorothy Tillman, of course, because she's the one who was behind that wonderful edifice there on 47th and King Drive. But your major purpose there was to talk to young men. And as you have stated before, we are afraid of our young people. You have gone out, and in fact, I read in, I think it was in the final call, where you were in Newark, and it was determined that the government, after you and other Muslims there, members of the nation, were able to negotiate a peace accord between the two warring factions, that actually there were government agents who were infiltrating the gangs and trying to prevent this accord from being in place. In other words, they wanted to see these gangs fighting. And one of the major reasons we have with these gangs is because they don't have adults, in many instances, to lead them. Now, we've got some folks out there that need help and that are misled, that's for sure. But there are a lot of other young people who are only there, Minister Farrakhan, as you know, because they have no leadership out of the community. You had all of these gentlemen, and it was a great event. Tell us a little bit about that, what you told all of those men. The place was standing room only.
We met with the Bloods and the Crips in Newark, New Jersey, who are striving hard to put an end to gang violence. And the harder they strive for peace, they found that there were forces that did not desire peace between these young brothers. And so the minute they would work for peace, outside forces that looked like us were working to break the peace. When the Berlin Wall went down, I read in the newspaper that some of the CIA agents that worked in Eastern Europe were no longer needed there, and they were being brought back to the United States to work with the gangs. Now, why would a CIA intelligence officer work with gangs? Are they there to stop the violence? I don't think so. You see, 30 years ago, the students of demography, which is the study of populations and their growth or decline, they said that by the year 2053, at the present birth rate of blacks, that we would be equal to whites or superior to whites in number, because the demographers found that for every white person born, a white person was dying. So they were at zero population growth. So when they put that out and made it public, that by the middle of this century, we would either be equal to or greater than they in numbers. Well, wise white people know that if one man, one vote, and we equal them in population or are greater than they are in population, then Run, Jesse, Run would not be a slogan anymore. You could put your brother in the Senate, you could put your brother in the governor's mansion, you could put your brother in the White House.
Right.
So wise white people did not wish for that to become a reality. Business people were saying at that time, 30 to 35 years ago, that white businessmen should not invest in the inner cities because the inner cities were about to explode. So if you look over the last 35 years, businesses in the inner city closed down, moved to the suburbs,
Right.
or moved to third world cheap labor markets, which when you are undereducated, not ready to fit into a information-oriented society, or a society where manufacturing has been ceded to outside. Most of you that are my age, or just a little younger, when you bought shoes 40 years ago, the shoe manufacturers were in Massachusetts. They had big shoe manufacturers there, clothing manufacturers. All of that's gone now. The shoe industry closed down. You buy your shoes today, they're from Italy, they're from Spain. You look at your garment, look at your suit, look at what you got, and look at where it was made. Most of it was not made here. It's made in Taiwan, it's made in China, it's made in some Asian cheap labor market, but sold to you for a pretty high price. So when manufacturing leaves the country, then the mass who may not be well educated have nowhere to find employment. When you don't have employment and you have a high birth rate, you have more young people fighting age and working age. If you have no jobs for them, then the only avenue for them is either join the armed forces or become criminal. See? So those black brothers and sisters that did not want to go in the criminal way, they joined the army. They were socially managed and manipulated to join the armed forces, and now gangs, which is a natural thing. You know, young people work with young people. Young people love to be with young people. You were like that coming up. They didn't call it gangs, but you had your posse, if you call it that. You know, you had the group that you ran with. You all carried your little switchblade. We never carried no guns, but we did have a little blade in case something went down. But in those days, you fought with your fist, and somebody pulled out a knife. He was a bad dude. Today, man, everybody got a piece. Now, where did you get the piece? Right. There's some gun merchants selling you weapons knowing you're not going to kill them. Right. You don't train your weapon on the enemy that brought your fathers into slavery. Your guns are trained on your own people. So in every city in America, the funeral parlors are filled with young men from 18 to 45 years of age. I was at the Motor Vehicle Bureau getting my license renewed a few years ago, and my dear brother that owns the funeral parlor, Spencer Leak, was there. And he took me into his private office and he said, Farrakhan, between Sunday and Wednesday, I had 35 bodies in one funeral parlor and 10 bodies in another, and they were from 18 to 45, and the number one killer was AIDS, number 2 was gunshot wound, and number 3 was suicide. Now, brothers and sisters, look, this is very, very serious. The female today is the now number 1 carrier of the AIDS virus. They take our young men off the street, they put them in prisons, and they naturally have a sex drive, so they're on what you call the down low in prison, you know, and when they come out, is really down low. They have a girlfriend by night and a boyfriend by day, and before you know it, you are carrying the AIDS virus. All of this is designed to destroy a people. Now, the Hispanics, they say, are the #1 minority. You have dropped out of your place. That ain't no accident, brother. They're killing us off wholesale. And the health situation is killing us worse than anything else. When you were coming up, or when I was a young man, I'll be 72 in a few weeks. But listen. When I was coming up, my mother never took me to a doctor, except when I split my hand open falling on some rocks. She took me to the hospital to get it sewed. But my mother, being from the Caribbean, and some of you from the Deep South, you know that Mama knew how to go out in the field and get a bush here and a bush there and make a tea here and a tea there, and you ain't never had no problems. But Grandmama and Mama, my mama, knew how to take care of her children. We didn't have no money, we didn't have no health insurance, but our knowledge was our health insurance. I'm saying that to you now because in those days, we were a stronger and a better people. You never found what you find today, where in those days you didn't have to lock your door. We have become the enemy of ourselves. And because we're looking at ourselves killing one another, raping one another, robbing one another, deceiving and cheating one another, you don't see the real enemy who's manipulating all this madness in our community. And unfortunately, we become sometimes willing, witting, and unwitting partners in our own destruction. And that is why you really need somebody to help to teach us. It is not about money, it is about the passing on of the required knowledge that will allow you and me to save ourselves. Says the scripture, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. I would like now, because you have, as you always do, Minister Farrakhan, certainly addressed the problems not only relative to our foreign policy, but what is going on here domestically, and it doesn't look good, that's for sure. The one comment you make that I like, it says, notwithstanding who is elected, we cannot depend on a benevolent Caucasian in the White House to solve our problems. We can solve our problems.
Yes.
We can solve our problems. And to do that, as you have pointed out, is through unity and a redefinition of morality.
Wow. You all ready for this? Now, you would think that our problems need to be solved by the government. Thank you. I'm glad you don't. Because every time the government has allowed us to have a gain through the suffering of our leaders and their followers, while we were celebrating the victory of the gain, the government was busy eroding that gain. So that 50 years after Brown versus the Board of Education, we are more segregated in schools now than we were then. 40 years after the Voting Rights Act, next year, if President Bush does not sign that piece of legislation, you won't be able to vote. See? Now, just think about that. Yeah, 2 more years, 2007. Now, here's a point. Mr. Schwarzenegger Did I say his name right? Here's a man that came from Europe 20 years ago, and he's the governor of the most populous state in the Union, and they're going to try to change some laws and a constitutional amendment so that he can run to be president of the United States. Nobody has to write or sign anything for that man to continue to vote. But for you, after dying on Edwin Pettus Bridge in Alabama, we got the Voting Rights Act. But look at the tricky language. They make it so that it must be renewed. But why must your voting rights be renewed? See, I mean, this is an enemy that really is a deceptive dude.
Let me interrupt you on one thing.
Yes.
I don't want people to get this impression, because I hear so many people. The Voting Rights Act had no effect on us in Illinois. You voted before the Voting Rights Act, and whether whether the guy in the White House signed it or not, you'll still be able to vote. The Voting Rights Act was primarily for those states in the Southeast where they had all kinds of things to keep people from voting, like a questionnaire, how many bubbles in a bar of soap, and all that kind of stuff. You know, but they would only do that with black folks. So I don't want anybody in this room to think, now it ought to be signed, because there are still some states that play games with how black folks vote. But you voted before the Voting Rights Act, and you'll be able to vote whether they pass it or not. However, we should be on the right side of this. It needs to be re-signed so that our brothers and sisters in the South, and it shouldn't even happen there, because you've got so many more black elected officials in the South. Many of them are controlling the voting mechanism. So, you know, you really have to look at this. Don't be fooled. I don't want any of you people sitting in this room now. If everybody here is a resident of Illinois, you will be able to vote, whether they sign it or not. I want you to know that. Any of you who are older than before it was signed in '65 who voted, you know you voted before it was signed, right? I did. And if anybody tries to stop me from voting, the minister will have to come and get them. You know?
Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, right.
Now, let me just clarify this point. We have more elected officials now than we've ever had.
Right.
We have more mayors, we have more state representatives, more aldermen, more sheriffs. That is a fact. But the masses have not been empowered, because we have more than what we had. And the sad thing about this is politics is valuable, but it must be learned how it should be used so that the little man can gain access to that which he hoped his vote would allow him to, or her, to achieve. This Voting Rights Act, I am hoping, of course, whether President Bush signs it or not, the fact that he has to renew it, that's our beef. It should have been universally said, and that's it, that those who were denied the right to vote would have that right, and it would never have to be reviewed. See? Now, this man is so slick, so clever. He gives you, I think it's the 13th Amendment. And in that 13th Amendment, is that the one that gives us our freedom?
That's the freedom, right.
But there's a tiny little thing in there that says, you know, of course, if you become a criminal,
If you're incarcerated.
if you're incarcerated, they have the right to take your rights. And now more and more of us are being incarcerated. The man is a very tricky fella. And to me, my dear brother Cliff, we have to make up our minds that we cannot depend on them.
That's right.
We have to depend on ourselves. Now the question is, do we have what it takes among us to deliver us from our condition? Do you know that we have the brightest black scholarship in the world? It's right here in America among us. When you think about the number of brilliant black people that are in every field of human endeavor, and not at the bottom of it, way at the top of every field. But the problem is we are not connected to the brilliant minds that are among our people. The moment they show brilliance, they're grabbed and put into corporate America, or into some business where you are not on their minds. The masses of the people are not on their minds. So what we have decided is that we must connect the learned black people in this country to the unlearned masses, so that the head will give direction to the feet and the hands, and we can become a people on the move. We got $750 billion, they say, coming through our hands. So we're not poor. If you took that and measured it with the nations of the earth, we would be the 12th richest nation on the earth. But we have no institutions that we build to satisfy our own needs. That is a travesty. So, brothers and sisters, when Tavis Smiley asked us to come to Atlanta, I don't know whether you saw his show. That's a wonderful young man, Tavis Smiley, very brilliant. But Tavis wanted us to make a contract. And he didn't say it straight out, Cliff, that the contract would be with the government like Newt Gingrich's contract, you know. But I thought, well, you know, a contract with these fellas is not wise.
And you said that.
You know, because their word means nothing. But you know what? I have not seen a time when blacks in leadership have been more responsive to a call to unite. That I have never seen like I am seeing it now. Many of our great black leaders, Elijah Muhammad for one, and Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, for two, and of course Dr. Conrad Worrell, all have called for a united front of African American leadership or black leadership. And we can call for it, but it has never happened. The time now is so ripe, and I am shocked everywhere I have gone to see pastors. I mean, you know, they wrote, I wrote something out as a vision statement for the Million Man March commemoration, and some sisters in Washington took it and they added a little to it and they sent it back to me, and I had about 12 bishops at my table in Phoenix from various denominations of Christianity. And I said, well, I just got this fax, and I want to read the mission statement and the vision statement for the 10th anniversary of the Million Man March. And when I read that, the bishops, you know, said, Brother Farrakhan, all well and good, but I didn't hear enough of you coming through that. It has too much fluff in it. Now, listen now. They said, minister, if we're going to get to the masses of our people, it has to be a very straightforward document with the kind of language that the masses want to hear. And I knew he was right, you know, but they had doctored my language and they sent it back kind of watered, you know, but the bishops were on it. So I said, man, look at this revolutionary spirit that's coming up in the church. You know, if the church awakens, it's over.
Yeah, that's right.
It is over.
Right. Let me, this moves right into what we were talking about. I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation about a email that I received. Actually, it was a copy to me, but it was written to Tavis. And he says, my brother, I watch you every night, and I think your heart is in the right place. I generally agree with your moral and political positions. You have a love for our people and our upliftment. However, I continue to be disappointed with the lack of action following the annual gathering of our black leaders. What is the point if it is not followed up with an action agenda and plan? A friend of mine, Ken Bridges, all of you remember that wonderful gentleman, Mata, who was unfortunately killed, once said that, quote, rapping and clapping and feel-good rhetoric will not raise the consciousness of our people. It will not get us to economic freedom. Please, my brother, help me to understand. Also, see my comments below. Thank you for taking the time. What he mentions below is he would have liked to see Dr. Claude Anderson invited because Claude Anderson,
he's brilliant.
He's brilliant, and he came up with Africa Town for Detroit. So the point I'm making is this, and the reason I wanted to lead into this, we're talking about the 10th anniversary of the Million Man March, which is going to be a tremendous event. You are the only one who can draw these people together. Because in my opinion, and this was a wonderful, I watched it all 37 of you folks talking. But next year there'll be part 2 and all 37 of you will come back again. Unless, in my opinion, Minister Farrakhan takes the lead through this 10th anniversary of the Million Man March, because from the first Million Man March, Brother Minister, there are still things going on as a direct result of your asking black men to come forward and take their responsibility, go back to their communities, join the church, the mosque, the synagogue, whatever, join an organization, and many people in Chicago and other places have certainly done that. You were the only one who could have gotten all those people to take a day off and come out there and have all of that wonderful unity. That was, I want to tell you, you could feel it in the air. Now, you can do this, and there are people who are now a part of this asking to join who 10 years ago were actually not only saying, I'm not involved, but saying, don't you get involved either. And notwithstanding that, everybody said, no, we're going. So now these same people are joining, and this is, you have to bring all of these folks together because, you know, all these wonderful folks, there are people who have different capacities. You know, realizing your capacity is important. There are some people who can don't do one thing, someone can write a book, some people, you are the one who can bring all this together, and that's what I think this Million Man March 10th anniversary commemoration is going to be about. What do you folks think?
Well, you know, Cliff, I am painfully aware of my mortality. And I do not want to leave this earth and see our people in the condition that our people are in. And I am deeply concerned that unless we do come together in a meaningful way, many of our people are going to die. And if our generation opts out of a struggle and passes it on to our children and our grandchildren, we will deserve to be cursed by history for what, not what we have done, but what we have failed to do. I agree with this person who wrote that article. You know, we are very eloquent, we're brilliant with words, and certainly we've had many great leaders who couldn't have gotten us to do anything if they did not have the ability with words to move us. But I recognize, I was in Washington the other day, and Brother Cliff, this is the truth. The type of leaders that were in that room we had Muslims, Christians, Hebrews, nationalists, socialists, academicians, political giants, thinkers. Claude Anderson was there. Maulana Karenga, the father of Kwanzaa, Jim Brown, the greatest football player, but who is working with the gangs and young people with American. All of these people were in one room. And we were there not to massage each other's egos. We were there for one reason. We recognize that each one of us have done what we could, but it is not enough. Most of the people that you will find that lead organizations, if you take the NAACP, the father or the mother of all civil rights organizations, a great organization, and all of us have benefited from the presence of the NAACP. Regardless to whether we are a member or like them today or not, I know that I have benefited because there was such an organization as the NAACP, and there was a magazine like the Crisis magazine. I have benefited from the black press. If there were no Pittsburgh Courier, if there were no Afro-American, if there were no black media to bring me to consciousness, I would not be who I am today. But what I recognize, Brother Cliff, is that these leaders have come painfully to the conclusion that no one leader or organization can solve the problems that we face. And this man will be writing those kind of letters henceforth, now, and forever, as long as the NAACP is over there doing their thing, the Nation of Islam is over here doing its thing, the Black United Front and the Black United Fund and the Urban League and the church is over there, here, everywhere, doing our thing. Our thing is not good enough, and our people are dying because leaders are divided and filled with envy and jealousy over each other. So, when Tavis said, let's make a covenant with the government, you know, let's forget that.
I agree.
I want the leaders now, we agreed, all of us in that room, that we're going to make a covenant with each other. Now look at this. Now the terms of that covenant is being worked out. Once you can see your leaders sitting in a room in agreement now that we are going to work for the collective whole of our people. I said to them, the time is out for you to just think for your church, think for your mosque, think for your organization, while an entire people are going to hell. if you're a leader, you must start thinking for the whole of our people and acting on behalf of the whole of our people. Everybody agreed.
Somebody has to be able to take the lead. And I totally concur, Brother Minister, that any sort of thing with the government, I mean, that's why we've got the problems we have right now. So that's ridiculous. But how many of these people that met in this room could get 1 million plus men to come to Washington, D.C.? So all I'm suggesting
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
You're
and
right.
That's why I'm saying
you know, that's my gift.
Yes.
You know,
that's right.
I have mine, you have yours. Each one in here has theirs. See, my gift is that I can take a difficult truth and make it simple and easy for anyone to understand. That's my gift. But my gift is not good enough by itself. So I sat in a room that night with Claude Anderson. And when Claude laid out his books for me, and I saw the brilliance of that mind, then let me gather the people, because that's my gift. Jesse Jackson, I don't know what you think of my brother, but he is one of the most brilliant men that's on the scene today. Jesse is very valuable.
Sure.
Al Sharpton is very valuable. Cornel West is very valuable.
Absolutely.
See, these are gifted people, but now we have to put our gifts together and plan for the whole of our people. And that's why when that man said plan, see, that's what's about to go down.
Beautiful.
Once these leaders make a covenant with each other and a covenant with you,
Right.
then it's your duty now to support that which is in your best interest. Once you see the leaders come together and make a covenant, and it's going to be public, and we're going to sign it.
Great.
See? Nobody sells out
Great. Great.
the aspirations of our people for personal advantage except at a great price. I didn't put that in the covenant.
Well,
But you got to make your leaders accountable. And those of us who sell you out have to pay a price for that. See? So now we're at the point where we must unite. It's an imperative. And these brothers and sisters are ready. The sister that led the Million Woman March, she was there. The brothers that led the Million Youth March, they were there. And all of us have agreed. And we're not interested in a march. We're interested in mobilizing our people to take responsibility to change the realities of our suffering. And this is not only going to be in the United States. This mobilization will take place in the Caribbean. It will take place in Africa, in the Isles of the Pacific, in the United Kingdom, wherever black people are. The time is now to mobilize, organize, and plan for our liberation. Thank you.
I feel liberated already. I want to say one thing that the minister said that is so important. And please, all of you, not only support these people who sign on to that, but make sure that those who don't pay a price. I have often heard said on the air, if it hadn't been for those brothers who were necklaced in South Africa, they'd still be under apartheid. You cannot fight the enemy if the enemy's in your house. You got to take them out first. All right? And that is what we're going to have here. Give everybody a big round of applause.
Thank you,
Minister. Okay.
I think we've done.
No, I think we've got it, yeah. we just want to thank everybody, and of course I want to mention again, before we have the minister just say one last word, Bartram Muhammad, who is the manager of Respect for Life bookstore. This is great. This is not because I was the moderator. I mean, it was.
But it was great because you were the moderator.
Thank you. This was done at, of course, the WVON, which was just fantastic. But you can get those. Also, yes, I have this. Right. This is a giveaway. This is great. Guidance in a time of trouble to America and the world. This is excellent. It's a giveaway at the booth. At the booth. That's great. What is the number? Booth 452. That's wonderful. And we certainly want to thank all of the wonderful ladies who put this on for V103 and the Expo for today's black women, rather. And we want to thank Mother Khadijah for being with us. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, Brother Minister, why don't you just say a word before we...
Well, to all the sisters, you know, the Million Man March would not have been successful had it not been for the sisters and the work that sisters did behind the scenes to make that march what it was. This time around, the commemoration is not just men coming, it is our sisters coming as well. And in the organizational structure of the Million Man March, Inc., which is now the commemorative march, women right alongside of men in every phase of the planning and execution, so that on October 14th, 15th, and 16th in Washington, D.C., we want the world to see a new people emerging. Men, women, children. Men respecting the women, honoring them as they should be respected and honored, and women respecting your man and helping him to be what God created him to be, and he cannot be it without your help. There is no man that can be a man without the aid of a woman today to help him be that, because you have the power to tear us down with this. And you know you look for the weakness in your man. And if you hit him and keep hitting him and keep hitting him, you run him right on out of the house to the lady down the street who ain't looking for his strength. So we've got to rebuild family, rebuild a loving relationship between black men and black women, and we must keep our young children safe from abuse. And brothers and brothers and brothers, no man will beat a woman. Really? No man should strike a woman. That we should not do. If you have to beat a woman, then you should leave. Because if you're wise enough, you can handle her with wisdom. You don't have to use your fist, but when you are forced to do that, it's time to go. Because why beat what you love or beat a second self of yours? That's like going to the mirror and beating your face in the mirror, looking at your stupidity. Don't beat your wife. Be careful how you punish your children, because we're all under stress and frustration. Don't take out your frustration on the children who cannot defend themselves. Discipline them, but don't kill them in the name of trying to make them better. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we got till October, but we'll be working. Keep your eyes and ears open for that covenant between the leaders, and those of us who signed that covenant will be signing it on behalf of ourselves for the good of our people. Then we have to work to make our word our bond. And when we make our word our bond, then you know you can trust that kind of leadership. May God bless us to come up out of this condition. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you, Cliff.
You're welcome. Mary Green.
Thank you, sweetheart.
And of course,
Thank you.
Stephanie Johnson, great job. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming out, everybody. Thank you.